excited now. Get hold of yourself.
Kind of lost track of who can come tonight. But I know our first instructor can. She's not here yet, so maybe we'll skip it. Roger Snook. It may end up being you first, Linda.
My motto is you snooze, you lose.
Yeah. Have any of you taken the CATF in context class? Do you want to say something about it? Okay. Sure. She can. Hello, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started, but we do have a few instructors that are going to be trickling in, so we might skip over them and come back to them when they get here. I'm Cindy Powers, the Director of Continuing Education and Lifelong Learning, and this course preview event was created so that you can get a little glimpse into the classes that are happening this spring. Oh my gosh, it's spring. It's winter. So we're going to go in order that's in the catalog. Our first instructor is Roger Snook with his design thinking course, but I don't think he's here quite yet. And then Peggy is not able to be here tonight for the CATF and context course, but I know that we have a lot of repeat people, and so I was wondering if there's anyone here who has taken the class who would like to share about their experience. Anyone? Sandy, yay.
I can say what we did last year. We got to read each of the plays and also to meet the playwrights. One was in person, the others were over Zoom, but it was so interesting to be able to read it, then be able to talk to the playwrights, to ask questions, and to get their perspective. So it was very enjoyable. I recommend the course.
Thank you. And Peggy, who teaches it, is the director of the Contemporary American Theater Art Festival, and so was part of the process of picking out all the plays and can share deeply about each of them. So the next class we're going to talk about is actually full already. It's Linda Tate's Harlem Renaissance class, but I'm going to have Linda talk a bit about it just so you can hear about her and her class. Some of you may already be registered for it.
Well, consider this an invitation to enroll in future classes that I teach. I'm really excited about this class, and I know that those who were able to get into the class are excited about it too. Focusing on the Harlem Renaissance, which was known at the time as the New Negro Movement, it was a great flowering of Black life, art, music, and literature. The Negro was in vogue, to quote the great poet Langston Hughes, who was essentially the poet laureate of the Harlem Renaissance. We're going to pose two questions in this class. The first is, when did the Renaissance begin and when did it end? And so we'll look at all of the different historical underpinnings that one could point to. And one of the potential starting points, it's a stretch, but is at Storer College in Harper's Ferry with the Niagara Conference, because that leads to the NAACP, and it's a great fermenting of philosophical thought around Black liberation in the United States. So we'll look at several different causes, lead-ins, underpinnings to the Renaissance. We'll spend a lot of time on the 1920s and 1930s in particular, and then we'll close in the 1950s with Lorraine Hansberry's play, A Raisin in the Sun. We'll meet for 7 weeks, Monday afternoons, 3:30 to 5, and we'll be doing a week on music, a week on poetry, a week on visual art, and then we have an optional field trip to Washington, D.C., where we will go to the Phillips Collection to see Jacob Lawrence's The Migration Series. Half of his Migration Series paintings are at the Phillips, the other half are at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And I've arranged for a docent to take us through that series. Then we will take the metro over to U Street Shaw, and we will go to Busboys and Poets Cafe, the original location, which was named after Langston Hughes. He was a busboy at a hotel in Washington, D.C. before he was in Harlem, and of course he was a poet. And then after that, we're meeting a tour guide who's going to do a 2-hour walk with us through U Street Shaw, which was the center of the Harlem Renaissance flowering in Washington, D.C. Then when we come back to class on April 7th, we'll talk about what was happening in the 50s. We'll look at Langston Hughes' great poetry collection, Montage of a Dream Deferred, which includes the very famous poem, Harlem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? And the next week, on April 14th, we'll have a screening of A Raisin in the Sun in this room. I got to arrange that with you, Cindy. Hopefully that'll work. Small details. And then the following week, we'll be back in the multipurpose room to ask, when did it end? And I said there were 2 questions, and the other question is the one that really fueled the Harlem Renaissance, which is, what is the best way for Black artists to express themselves, to show their work, to put their mark on the cultural map? And Langston Hughes had one view, and other artists like County Cullen and Claude McKay, poets, had a very different view. And there was a very lively debate that fueled the Harlem Renaissance. So we'll kind of assess where we think things netted out. So look forward to seeing those of you who are going to be in the class. I see some faces, and see some faces on the waiting list. And I'll be in touch next year with what I'm going to teach.
Thank you. And I should say these classes are mostly 6 weeks, but we have occasional ones that are 5 weeks or 7 weeks, like Linda's is a 7-week course. And most courses start the week of March 10th. So next we'll have Mark Kohut talk about the Cafe Society discussion group, which is a free Zoom-only discussion group that is every Tuesday all year round, except holidays.
Yeah, it's an endless Mobius strip. It is not 5 weeks or 7 weeks. It's 75 and 7,500. It is one of the foundational classes, discussion groups of the lifelong learning. I wasn't there at the beginning, but within a couple years. But the late Jack Young and Mr. Mike Austin, still around, were the founders with Karen Rice. Anyway, what it is discussion on current events, basically. When I was a kid growing up in Pittsburgh, my parents used to watch this show from Chicago called The Breakfast Club, in which they sat around. And some of you remember that? It was obviously syndicated. Yeah, that's right, Don McNeil. And so Chicago to Pittsburgh, I mean, obviously it wasn't local. It was somehow syndicated. But anyway, and I just, they didn't talk then about it. We all listened, but I thought I wanted to grow up to be able to take part in those kinds of conversations. So, 10 years ago, I was finally old enough to do that. And so I joined the cafe discussion group. And, as the true cliche happens, there is a firestorm of news every day. We need to get a handle on it. Everybody comes with listening to whatever news from wherever and bring it together. It alternates between, not, exact 50-50, local and West Virginia news and discussion, and national. We have Daniel Bennett, I should mention him. He's the man who's been hosting it since the pandemic. He had a time in Congress and does more right now in nonprofit. And he brings in people from outside. David Pepper, he's Ohio's, I don't know, what's the right analogy? We have had local legislature, all the candidates who ran in our West Virginia's election came on one at a time. I told Daniel when I thought he was going to be here last week, last week I told him when I thought he was presenting, to tell everybody this. Look, you can't make it every day. 8:30 on Tuesday? Yeah, I know. You people don't like that. Most of you. That's okay. But sign up to get the invitation because you will get stuff that is sent in between week to week. The leading articles of the week, I constantly joke truthfully about that at our group. Somebody sends out this and that, as somebody said to me, the next day it's on the major media, Mark. So you'll get it a day early, you get the smart stuff, you can contribute your own back and forth, and you'll learn everything your fellow people believe.
Okay, next we have Pat Donahue, who is with her grandchildren. So she gave me something to read to you, so I will read the words of Pat. Her class is Characters You've Known and Want to Create, a writing workshop. She is a class coach and facilitator. Pat loves to write about interesting people and what makes them tick, especially when it involves empathy, eccentricity, and humor. Her popular May Dean short stories have been published in the Anthology of Appalachian Writers and won awards from Barbara Kingsolver, Dorothy Allison, and Crystal Wilkinson. Her nonfiction credits include dozens of human interest profiles and a book about her controversial ancestors published by Kent State University Press. Whether you are writing human interest stories, literary fiction, or rollicking rom-coms, they all depend upon memorable characters to make them work. But just how do you go about creating such characters that fascinate and inspire? That's what we'll explore through class discussion, individual and group activities, and iconic examples. Join us for 5 fun, interactive sessions designed to delight, inspire, and engage. Her class size has been limited to 12 for optimum sharing and participation. So there are spots in that class. If you want one, better grab it. And then next we have Doc McCluskey with his class Mozart, Only Mozart. No, I'm sorry. That's David Rampey. I'm sorry. You know, you're both just really classy. It just...
Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Yes, a child prodigy. Yes, a potty mouth. No, he was not poisoned by Salieri. Yes, he was a very happily married man. And yes, he was one of the greatest composers of all time. And no, his music does not make you any smarter. And yes, we will hear a lot of Mozart. So, Mozart, only Mozart, say yes to Mozart. We have 6 sessions, Tuesdays starting the 11th, and my class is a 2-hour class from 11 to 1. It will be structured as if you were attending a Mozart concert we'll hear a major work and then several smaller works, a couple of concertos, some stringed ensembles, some chamber music, and we will end up with the great C minor Mass and his Requiem. And I hope to maybe arrange a extra class where we can get together and view an entire production of Magic Flute afterwards. So we'll work that out with the people in the class.
Thank you, David. And that one is a full 2-hour class. No, I'm sorry. I'm pretty sure yours is a couple classes away. Yeah, no, next we have Marty Amerikaner and his class. No, then people are going to get confused by the chronological order in the catalog.
Well, before I talk about my class, I want to give an extra pitch in to follow up on Mark about the Cafe Society, because I've been involved with it for a long time as well. And just my perspective on it is sort of like this. In 6th grade, once a week with no warning, my teacher would walk in the room and say, "Current events test, first question." 6th grade. We were responsible for having read the New York Times growing up in New York, as well as, you know, there's a gazillion papers in New York. So, pure survival, I became addicted to newspapers and news of all type, and I haven't been able to shake that addiction. One of the things that's really wonderful about Cafe Society is you can sort of feed your addiction to this kind of stuff to the point of being so overloaded, you're really wanting to go do something else like listen to Mozart. So it's a good balance. We have it all for you in lifelong learning. All right. So my course, Deep Dives, I started doing this course, I think during the first term of COVID, when I found myself walking in the streets alone, listening to podcasts. And at the time, I know they've become just, you know, omnipresent, and everybody's got earbuds in and are listening to podcasts. But at the time, that really wasn't the case. And so I felt kind of good about bringing some podcast material to people, and the basic format of the class hasn't really changed very much. I'm going to give you one squeaky little caveat in just a moment. But basically, you know, I listen to a variety of different podcasts and select one each week based on the variety and the interest of both mine and the people in the class. And the format is just what it says in the little description. We play either entirely, but usually we go through maybe 10 or 15 minutes, stop, discuss for a while. What's going on here? What does this person have to say about whatever the topic happens to be? What do you think about this? What are your reactions? What questions do you have? And then we play some more, and then we play some more. It's actually based a little bit on a model of teaching I used to use when I taught graduate students about psychotherapy. And we would play part of a videotape, and then we would talk about it. And then we'd play some more, and we would talk about it, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that kind of a, what are the experts saying, and then what do we think about it, and what can we learn from that? That's sort of the format. What's a little bit different this time, what I'm planning to be different this time, is that it's based on the course I taught for lifelong learning last term, which was not this. It was a course really devoted more to my field of psychology. And what I was trying to organize was a way of understanding some of our polarization in society. There's a lot of different levels to talk about that, but I was focusing on what are some of the psychological variables, the psychological dimensions that contribute to and are affected by polarization in society. And I thought that course went very well. The students were in it who seemed to like it quite a bit, and you know, I reminded myself of a lot of stuff I used to teach, so that was fun. So I'm basically, for this this semester, or this 6-week term, I'm intending to focus the podcast selections a little more narrowly into what I wrote here was psychology. Of course, I can't stick to what I wrote. I wrote this weeks ago, so I can't stick to that. It's going to be a little broader than that, more kind of in the general area of social science, behavioral science. What are some of the issues that are kind of out there in the world right now that are both interesting and important for our own well-being, for psychological health and well-being, but also for, again, sort of understanding what are some of the big things that are going on in society that we might be affected by. I'll see if I can stay away. My goal is to stay away from the obvious things that are going on in society. There's enough other places to do that, but we'll see. Okay, so I hope that was confusing and vague enough to pique your interest, and so therefore you'll sign up.
Thank you, Marty. Yes, we have Mark again with his class, I Lost It at the Movies, which will be in this room right here.
Did I know? I guess I forgot that. A couple things. I've only run into one adult in my time in Shepherdstown who knows what that allusion is to, but everybody knows what it comes from. But let me tell you how this course came about. I started the first month that this country, the state shut down during the pandemic with a reading group. I had a film course to teach. Nobody knew how to do films on Zoom. I said, I want to teach. I whined to Karen, I got to teach something. And the people who were in the class, we talked. I wanted to teach, I wanted to do a couple novels about the plague, but that didn't go over too well. And see, everybody, that's what, if they didn't bother to laugh then, they just, but my friend, my great friend Howard Vochtel sent me a New Yorker article, a review of, an article on Philip Roth's last novel called Nemesis, which was about the polio epidemic in the country, particularly Newark, in 41, 42. It was plague-related, but everybody knew and heard, remembered from family or whatever about polio. Everybody wanted to take it, and from there started the Philip Roth Reading Group, which just finished in December, by the way. We read every work, all 29 novels, 2 works of nonfiction. We're legendary in our own minds, written up in the Philip Roth Society, and there'll be more to come. I'm working on publicity. But out of that, the group wanted to continue, and there's no more Roth. And somebody came up with, because we had read about the influences of Philip Roth, and they included Franz Kafka, Anton Chekhov, Thomas Mann, other people. So let's do, and you'll see it in here, I'm shilling for that, the Philip Roth, Reading Philip Roth's Reading Special Interest Group. And I wanted to teach a film course. I went back and forth with what, who, couldn't come up, was very indecisive. Suddenly when that developed, I knew some Czech cinema, I taught a course in that. I knew Orson Welles a bit. And so, wow, we got the trial, we have the castle. And the next was going to be Chekhov. And that still might be a surprise because I still haven't determined which. But I'm going to, that's what this is. I wrote this up the way I did just because, I'm me. But I got to tell you here, I was researching just last night, and I don't know if the rights to the castle that I remember from '68 are available or certainly affordable. It's not on YouTube. It's not whatever. So I got to check that out. If not, there's a German movie of the castle that starts out real weird, but I have to see if I could do that in, or we'll do 2 Chekhovs. So this film class is organized around the reading group out of Roth, and the trial, Orson Welles. Man, this is as much about Orson Welles as it is about Kafka, if you've ever seen it. So is The Castle that I recall. But the Chekhov play is going to be Vanya, or Uncle Vanya, and I have an idea about the recent one-man show of Vanya, which we may do 17 minutes at a time. So Sign up. It'll be fun.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, it really is your turn.
Thank you. Actually, I had a dream one night. I died and I went to hell, and for eternity I have to come on after David Rampey. It's pretty terrible. Before I do my class, I promised Ann Jones, I talk about her class, plant-based diet. 4 weeks. She's a wonderful teacher. First week is on why a plant-based diet. Weeks 2 and 3 on how it's good for the environment and planet. And week 4 of how to do it in your own life. So I would recommend that. Ann Jones. For me, my course is Dreaming Argentina, Jorge Luis Borges and Magical Realism. A worship dictator, a collapsing economy, a former model became first lady named Eva, creeping fascism and a war on truth, Argentina 1946. For Borges, who believes time is circular and time is eternity, this is a very good reading for us. Enter Jorge Luis Borges, a blind librarian. How cool is that? Who used fiction to restore order to a mad world. Come with me to my dreamed Argentina, land of Che Guevara, the tango, gauchos, and secret encyclopedias. We'll listen to tango music, talk about Argentine cuisine, Argentine history, and read magical realism. It's going to be a fantastic class, and places are limited, so come on in. Finally.
Thank you, Doc. Next, we have Carol Richmond. Her class will be Living Every Day with Awe, and this will be a 4-week class.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. You probably know me as the happiness lady. Those of you who have, a few of you have taken my class on happiness, and so I was challenged to move on from happiness to the next level, and that is awe. So I'm wondering how many of you have recently felt awe or remembered feeling awe? Raise your hand. Very good. Okay, remember what that felt like now. And how many of you would like to wake up tomorrow morning and feel awe? Okay. Well, that is what we're going to do in the class. It's about learning how to find awe in everyday things. You don't have to go to the highest peak or find an eagle or a waterfall. Those are nice things to do, you know, and I recommend it. We will be doing some walking to find awe, not a lot, but it depends on our population. But we will be really realizing the power of awe in our emotions. And it's amazing to me. I took a course with Jake Eagle and Michael Amster, who wrote this book, The Power of Awe. I know that there's some other good books out there. We will be looking at Approaching Awe by Dashner Keltner and some other resources as well. But basically it's a short class, so we're going to take a week kind of a sense. So we can do sight and beauty and pictures people might want to bring in or that they'll take of what they find, and then body and movement and sensing, and move on to smells, all that we, maybe apple pie or turkey's cooking. There are lots of things that our senses carry with us, and sound too. So that each week we'll get a chance to explore the depths of what happens actually in our brains as we experience awe. And the funny thing is that it really helps lower stress. So if any of you feel stressed any day, this is one of the tools that's so easy to access. It's just to remember that we can find beauty and awe in our everyday lives. And so it also helps us to feel connected. So those of us who feel alone sometimes, I know I do, and especially in this weather, being stuck in the house, we can go to a memory of something that brought us great awe, that we just were amazed at. I think about my first time I saw my first grandchild was like, oh, amazing thing. And so those feelings that we have and we can conjure helps us to feel connected to people, even if their bodies are not right there. So it helps with loneliness, it helps with well-being. Time has no boundaries with it. You know, it is devoid of it. It's devoid of language. It's another realm that we really haven't experienced as much. Now, of course, there are some things that are negative awe, and, you know, I'm still open to discussing those as well. So it's a way to become more open and childlike and take a breath of life's majesty and really live in that. So it's a participatory class. We'll talk, we'll watch a little bit of lecture talking and some videos, and maybe even put some of our awesome experience videos on a website. I've gotten permission from Jake Eagle for doing that. So if any of you want to raise your energy level and get out of a funk and go to the zone of awe, come to this 4-week class. You know, it's awesome, and so are you. Thanks.
Thank you, Carol. So next we have Roger Bernstein. His class was originally going to be at 3:30, but now it is going to be from 1:30 to 3 o'clock on Wednesdays. And Wolfgang's class is actually going to be from 3:30 to 5. So we rearranged those two so that they do not conflict. So Roger, if you would like to come on up and speak out your class first, which is Memorable Poems, Singer, Songwriters, Poetic Lyrics.
I've been doing this poetry class for years. I had gray hair, not white hair, by the time I got here. So the poem, my title of this, I'm saying, is this it? Okay. This class is titled Memorable Poems, Singer, Songwriters, Poet Lyrics. And we'll have this 6-week course that combines the song, poetic lyrics with recording performance. And sometimes you can't, some singers may not be so enunciating so well. So we'll have the text and we'll play their singer-songwriters. I've selected readable poems for anyone. And I consider music, and I think David Rampey might agree with me. If not, we can have a debate. But I consider music to be the most powerful emotion of all the arts. And even with film, which gets that exuberance within the movies even. One that I make a point about is the lyrics root is the ancient U-shaped string lyre accompany song, the ancient times, and that word of lyric root is what I'm going to be teaching is lyric poems that are not going to be page after page. It's going to be dense. It's going to be very song-like, and we will. Our poems will capture emotion, I think, with simplicity and with depth. We've selected poetic text of singer-songwriters from Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, Joni Mitchell, Patti Smith, and Neil Young. And I think that's a place where many of you are very familiar in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and you'll stay with it for the 90s and as we move forward. And we're going to read aloud in the class that we have, and it's bringing to the elements of our celebrated prestige award poets, including Wisława Szymborska, Ada Limon. She was a poet of the Congressional Laureate. Sharon Olds, James Wright, Robert Frost, Dana Joa, Kim Adazio. They all are driven to tell the hard truth, and they cover our human predicament pretty broad. And the heartbeat of a poem isn't referred to, it is recreated in our various impressions, and class discussions will enrich feelings. We look forward to March 12th, 1:30 to 3, and I'm very grateful to have Marcy as my assistant, because there's work there that is going to be technical to get this thing through. So, I guess that's it. Oh,
Oh, you okay? Thank you. So our next class is Wolfgang Pordzik's, Nazi Germany, the Holocaust, What Lessons Learned. And he could not be here tonight. He is in Israel, but he sent me some things. Okay. He sent me a couple slides and text to read, so I think you'll get a little glimpse into his class. Not that I can really do it justice. So I will read Wolfgang's words. Dear lifelong learners, I am very sorry for not being here with you in person. I am traveling in Israel. I am grateful to Cindy, our director, for agreeing to read the brief summary of our upcoming course titled Nazi Germany, the Holocaust, What Lessons Learned. Less than a month ago, we remembered the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz extermination camp. On January 27th, 1945, the Red Army on its advance to Germany discovered the camp. January 27th has become the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Each year marked by many official events, including on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., commemorating the genocide of Jews and other minorities during World War II. But how deep is the remembrance of the Holocaust? The knowledge about the show really in the United States? You may have heard that many young Americans are unaware of what happened in the Holocaust, or who is to blame for it. A study published in 2020 by the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany produced alarming findings. 11% of survey respondents in the age group of 18 to 39 believe the Jews caused the Holocaust. Whoa. The New York Times reported on the numbers as proof that the Holocaust is fading from memory. Wow. It's no stretch to conclude that the public at large, in particular the young generation, lacks knowledge, even awareness of the Holocaust, let alone familiarity with the historical development leading up to the murder of 6 million Jews. Our six-part course will deal with all these issues. Throughout the course, we will reflect on the meaning for today's world, both domestically and internationally. Oh, I started with the second slide. This was the first slide. Sorry about that. Well, and here's the second slide. Okay. We will review anti-Semitism, its definition, its root causes, its history in Europe, and how anti-Semitism presents itself today. We will work through the history of the Weimar Republic and ask, why did it collapse? Why did it allow the takeover of the Nazis in 1933? As a consequence, Germany rapidly changed into a brutal dictatorship. The question for us will be, what institutions did the Nazis seize first to make their takeover irreversible? We will spend time on the Holocaust itself, the history, the question of who were the perpetrators, who were the collaborators, and how did the Nazis organize this killing machine on a mass scale? Finally, is the Holocaust a singular event in the history of mankind? And our final session will be dedicated to the important question, what are the lessons learned for our contemporary world? And what are the indicators, the early warning signs that a society, a nation state is at risk of becoming a dictatorship? I invite you to join our course. I am looking forward to our conversation. Thank you. So that is Wolfgang's course. And that will be 3:30 to 5. What was that? Yes. Okay. And next up, we have Fred Turco talking about current international issues discussion group.
It's an international discussion group. Requires that you stay current on events and be prepared to discuss the events that are taking place. It is packed with knowledgeable people who have spent time abroad and so are able to, again, provide some background to the discussion group. It's about a dozen people, plus or minus, and it's for me it's always enlightening because I learn something there as opposed to teaching something, and I appreciate the fact that so many knowledgeable people who are in this area and mostly retired will take the time to spend to talk to the rest of us.
Thank you, Fred. Okay, next we have Diane Roman talking about her class, Getting a Grip on Upheaval and Change, Working Through Transitional Times. Oh, yeah, great.
Okay. Can you hear me? I'm not going to go up there because I hurt my foot. It would be a disaster getting down. Hi, I'm Diane Roman. I'm teaching, well, last semester or last group, I don't know if they're semesters or not now. I did a group called, with Julia Cameron's work, dealing with the Artist's Way and stuff. And there was a lot of interest to continue on with an occasional group for artisans. And that's an interesting term because, or creatives, because anybody could be an artist or a creative individual. And so in the interest group, I have set up, hopefully, one, I'm sure it'll take time to evolve, but an interest group on conversations with creatives. So whether you're a dancer or a poet, my late husband was a physicist. He thought of himself as very creative, and he was. It's an opportunity for anyone wanting to share their experience in the creative realm that they work with. It doesn't have a specific day and time yet because it's all kind of a brand new thought. And my email's in here, and so I'll wait to hear from people that want to become part of it. I've already gotten a couple emails, and then we will coordinate a day and time to do our first kind of meeting. Lucinda has been wonderful about offering that we will have a place once we know where we want to be and when we want to be. So don't shy away if you think that you're not creative enough. I'm a production artist, so I run a studio. So to me, having a chance to talk with other artisans about stumbling blocks and brick walls and where to put your work or whatever is important, but other people might just be doing a hobby and still want to talk to someone about whether they're doing clay or whether they're writing a poem, and just in a casual, not a critique kind of way. So please, if you know, and if you know anybody that is a creative that would like a place to occasionally meet with other creatives, share that word, kind of thing. I know that I haven't done it yet, but I will be putting a little blurb in a couple places, like the Firehouse Gallery and stuff, so that other artisans in the area might know about it and be receptive to be involved. So that's the first thing. The second thing is my 6 weeks class on getting a grip on upheaval and change. This is my third time to teach this class. It changes each time. This Mike and I are not friends. Sorry. Is it okay? Okay. It's based on the work by William Bridges. He did a book called Transitions, and he did it 30 years ago or longer. And he did it based on his need for him to kind of figure out how he was doing as a young man, the changes in his life that made no sense. They had moved, he had quit his job, he had thought it would be a great thing to quit his job, move into a commune, and then all of a sudden the whole life of everybody falls apart. And what seemed like it would be a good thing turned out not to be so good. And as he started trying to sort that through, he developed a variety of techniques that helped him. And he started, and he was a history teacher or a literature teacher, but he had also been very interested in myths and early cultures. And how did they manage to get through all these major upheavals that we have in life, that we really do, but in modern society, we don't think of, we can't do that. We can't have a ritual where you go off into the woods for a week and come back and you've seen the ghost and whatever. You can't do that now. And so our society has no tools to help people get through one major change and another. And everybody has change, whether it's changing where you live, growing up, getting married, whether you've lost a spouse. There's a lot of things. I was introduced to his book because my husband, unfortunately, had a heart attack and died in a blink. And my sister-in-law is a therapist and brought me this book all these years ago and said, you need to read this. And it was very helpful for me, and I've used it very, very much since. But over the years, he has grown up and he's changed. And so the book that I have, I need another hand. Hold on. I'll use this. Oh, you can? The book I've been using is this one called Transitions, and there's 2 or 3 versions of it out there. It's a good book. It talks about how when you have a change, it is not the same as the transition that's necessary to survive that change. They're 2 completely different things, and so often people think they're the same, and then down the line, they're up against a brick wall again, and they don't know how to get past or how to move forward. And so he's kind of broken it into looking even back through old societies, that the first thing you have to do with a change is let go of what you're used to, and then allow a time. I would call it grief. He calls it the neutral zone, but allow a time where you're kind of floundering before you know what your next new beginning is. And it does make a lot of sense as he goes through that. And we'll look through, I'm not using this book in class as the required reading, but I will talk about it and his steps through it. What he did later in life, his wife died, which was quite interesting. After 25 years, he all of a sudden was in a position to do in his life what he had written about and talked about. And he's worked with major corporations, organizations that do downsizing and changing and helping them have transitions with their employees, as well as personal transitions. And what he found was, once it hit him for his real life, it was all different. And I think this is a wonderful way of looking at what he's written, and his steps are excellent. They're very helpful for each person, because everybody will go through change differently. We all have change, whether we like it or not. It can be wonderful. It can be frightening. We might just think in terms of what's happening around us as a change. How will we survive it? And he gives you tools and ways of dealing step by step with moving forward. But in this book, he also talks about his failures and his successes, and how this really did work for one person. And it's his point of view on his theories and how they work for him. But it's a really an eye-opening experience for him and to him to share with others. So I think it's a great way for all of us, because we're still going through transitions. We'll be going through transitions until the day we die. And so how can we use that in a positive, productive way? And how can we feel that each transition that we go through, we can grow from it in a positive way? So please join me. I think it's on Thursdays from 12:30 to 2. There is a limit on there. It's not in the book, but there's a 10, 12 person limit. I do feel it's a class that people need to talk. It is a class that you respect each other's point of view, because Some people will have different points of view. But it's meant to be a place for people can say some of the deepest, most painful things in their heart and just be able to set them out on the table and see how they work and stuff. So if you are interested, or if you think it's helpful to you, or you know someone it would be helpful to, please have them come. It's a good class. We have a really good, responsible group of people each time sharing.
Thank you.
This is called the way of... my third hand? No, the wrong book.
Want me to hold the microphone?
Oh, now I forgot it. This is called The Way of Transitions. Okay? And it is at 4 seasons.
Thank you. Thank you, Diane. Next, we'll have Eric Thompson talking about church and state, a history of their separation or lack thereof. Also, maybe you could promote the Artful Codgers this weekend.
Right. Thursdays 2:30 to 4, church state, the history of their, whatever I called it. Hi. So this class, my class, is about religion, politics, and justice in historical perspective. By justice, I'm including ethics and morality. By religion, though there are many ways to define it, I'm mainly talking about belief in and relating to gods and goddesses. By politics, I mean official coercive power. In human thought for thousands of years, ancient literature shows a constant tension and wrestling between religion on the one hand and ethics, morality, and justice on the other hand, and how political power should or does relate to either. Miriam Lichtheim, an eminent Egyptologist, once wrote, "Religion and ethics were and are two distinct avenues of thought." This might sound counterintuitive to us, but that's something we're going to explore. I'm going to just briefly illustrate this from two ancient anecdotes from the Jewish world, and just to give you a taste. There are two Jewish rabbis walk into a bar. Actually, it's two different pieces of literature, one from the Gospels and one from the Talmud. Rabbi Jesus was once asked, "What is the greatest commandment of the Torah?" And his answer was, some of you could answer this, right? His answer was, "The greatest commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second is love your neighbor as yourself." But in a contemporary rabbi, Rabbi Hillel, in a story in the Talmud, was approached by a would-be convert. And he said to Rabbi Hillel, "Rabbi, I will convert to Judaism if you can explain the whole Torah to me while standing on one foot." And Rabbi Hillel said, "What you hate, don't do to another human being." That's the whole Torah. Everything else is commentary. Now go study. I did it. That illustrates something that was a vigorous debate in ancient religious literature. Notice that Rabbi Jesus distinguished religion and ethics and prioritized religion, whereas Rabbi Hillel prioritized ethics and left religion out of it. And so that is going to be a thematic thread that we're going to trace through this historical study, which in 6 weeks will zoom in on 5 ancient cultures. One of them not quite so ancient. We will go to Egypt and look at the administration of Amenhotep IV, also known as Akhenaten, and then we'll look at a particular regime in ancient Israel, the regime of Josiah. We'll see a through line that will connect with many other classes that you've heard about today. We'll look at the triumph of Christianity in the Roman Empire. We'll look at Islam and its conquest of Spain in particular. We'll zoom in on Spain. And then lastly, we'll look at a series of events that took place in the British colonies in North America in the 18th century. And we will compare and contrast them. And our theme will be how political power related to religion and ethics in those societies. And that's the class. So come and join us. It should be interesting. It should be maybe aggravating in some ways. And having said that, I want to put in 2 commercial words. There's in your program, there is an interest group. One of them is the Artful Codgers. The Artful Codgers grew out of an improv class here in the Lifelong Learning Program, and we have crystallized into 7 of us are performing a grab bag of several small theatrical pieces in this very room, on this very stage, just a couple days from hence. On Saturday and Sunday, we will have performances at 2 o'clock right in here. Admission is free, but we suggest a donation, and all of the donations go to the food pantry of Shepherd University. And we're doing 3 short plays, including 1 Chekhov, and 2 contemporary pieces, and 2 monologues. It's about an hour's worth of material, and so if you aren't doing anything else at 2 o'clock on Saturday or Sunday, come and join us for the Artful Codgers. We're also open to new members, if anyone wants to join us after you see our work. I also just want to put in a plug for, I'm in a play at the Black Box Theater, the Roving Pellegrine Theater Company. It's called The Sweet Science of Bruising. I play a guy in London in the mid-19th century who runs an underground women's boxing ring. And it's really quite interesting. It's women's empowerment is the theme, and it's an adult play. So it's March, 2 weekends in March. It opens March 7th and closes the 16th. And there's a poster in the hall. You can get more information. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Eric. So next we have American Indian burial practices with Massaw, who I don't believe was able to come this evening. He has taught this class before. It was on the cover of the fall catalog. And this is going to be a 4-week class this time. It will be in the classroom for maybe the first session or 2, and then he will be taking his participants to to the sites around nearby where you can see the Indian burial grounds. So next we have Michelle with Game of Thrones, Tales from History and Myth.
Thank you for everything, Lucinda. So I just had a nightmare where I followed Eric Thompson. But we got y'all grinning, so thank you, Eric. So I see a bunch of wildlings out there, and that means we're going to have some fun. But as you know, winter is coming. In fact, I think winter is here, and it came in mid-January this year. George R.R. Martin is an interesting, quirky, but kind personality. He's also a very smart guy, an accomplished author, and a voracious consumer of popular histories. And on one level, Game of Thrones is a romp through history. Beginning in 1991, he took, I think he's on record as saying, I couldn't make this stuff up. And what he did is take everything he learned from every generation, every civilization, 6,000 years of human history, every odd factoid, every character, and he threw it in a big stew pot. He didn't have to add much spice or heat because it's there, but he did give it a good stirring. And then he reached in and took individual characters and individual weird factoids and individual architecture and archaeology, and he stuck them down in very startling combinations. And the effect is 5 best-selling books, 2 more promised, and 70-some hours of really good television. Nominated for 164 Emmys, and it's won 59. So, not bad. We're going to spend most of our time playing Martin's game in reverse. So we're going to go into the books and into the TV series and look at that character and that civilization and that millennium, and we're going to take it out and replace it back into its original context. And I say context because Martin has almost always more than one inspiration. So we're going to go down some really interesting, I think, because I love history, rabbit holes. And we're going to see some really interesting histories, odd and strange connections. And we're going to enjoy learning, because I'm not going to go for the obvious stuff. And I hope you have fun, because I've had a lot of fun getting ready for it. We're not going to, though, ignore some of his bigger themes. I think one of my favorite lines in the book is, "Tell your brother he's marching the wrong direction." And Game of Thrones is a beacon burning really bright right now in warning. This is the world that we were stuck in until just so very recently. This is what happens when racism and misogyny are celebrated and codified. This is what happens when raw power has no boundary. This is what happens when a state compels one religion, or one religion controls a state. This is what happens when just a few people matter and most everybody doesn't. So, leave your swords at home, but ride with me to Westeros with your books of wisdom, because we're going deep into the dark, but just to find the path forward. We're going to try to find the path back to the future ideals of Jefferson and Eleanor Roosevelt and Martin Luther King and the Starship Enterprise. Hey, I also have the pleasure of being kind of an MC with a little bit of history thrown in there on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. Genevieve O'Loughlin from O'Hurley's is going to do a concert on her Celtic harp for St. Patrick's Day. And we're going to explore the history of that. Now, some of you were at a thing we did last spring. It was more history and a little music. We're going to flip that. And I'll do a little bit of history, but we're mostly going to enjoy Genevieve's music. I'm sorry? No, actually, it's here at this stage. 2:30, March 17th. St. Patty's Day.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. I'm going to let Marty share one last thing before he has to go.
See, I get to follow Michelle. That's, just quickly, in the book, you will notice under the interest groups that there is a guitar interest group. And we're closing in on, I think, almost 8 years of getting together, except during COVID, which we were wise enough to not do such a thing. But we get together if you're interested, or if you know somebody who likes to play an acoustic guitar. Doc brings his bass guitar. We have a wonderful time meeting on Thursday afternoons from 3 to 4:30. And if you're interested, my email address is in the program book. We just strum and we take turns calling songs, things that people are typically very familiar with. And you don't have to be, an Eric Clapton wannabe, even if most of us are. Just if you think you might like to play with other people and you have basic guitar skills, it's not for absolute beginners, but you don't have to be an advanced guitarist either. If you know the basic chords and like to strum and pretend you can sing, that's what I do. I pretend I can sing. We have a really good time. So send me an email. I'll give you more the specific information about where and what and all that stuff. Thanks.
Thank you, Marty. So we just have about 3 left, and I just want to say when we're done, I'll go grab the food, and we can have drinks and food across the hall and mingle and ask instructors questions or anything you'd like. So now we have Jim Surkamp talking about his course, Inspired Creative Lives Affecting Jefferson County.
So now she has you thinking about food. All right. I'm going to enjoy this, so you will too. Descriptions of my one class on Mark Twain and 6 classes on finding your creativity, and they both start in March. Mark Twain, quote, "Once a spindly, sickly, but reckless little boy, Mark Twain, the world-famous and notorious one, was reflecting with his mother, who was kind of like him, frankly. 'Mama,' he said, 'I suppose that you were very afraid I wouldn't live.' She paused. 'No, I was afraid you would.'" Yep, this was the man who launched his famed lecturing career speaking on a very, very wrong note. His poster for the talk that night on the Sandwich Islands said, "We will devour a child in the presence of the audience if some lady will kindly volunteer one for the occasion." What is there not to like about Mark Twain? I will be giving a lifelong learning 90-minute class on Mark Twain April 9th called "Telling the Truth is the Funniest Joke in the World." You must bring some Mark Twain quotes to class, and I will bring into our gathering how Mark Twain and his life partner Olivia, or Livy, she called him Youth. Oh my, how she would lead her Technicolor tornado away from the proverbial cliff edge of bankruptcy or absurdity. But just like all of us, devastating challenges they did face. But it was these challenges that can drive a deep heart into seeing the bright side of things most dreadful and succeed in conjuring up a good laugh or a wicked insight. Okay, so now the second thing I got for you is this. I'm going to have 6 weekly 90-minute classes on creativity, people, and how they grow it. That's you. And it's beginning Friday, March 14th, and I give in much great detail what our creativity class is about because, oh, forget all that. Yeah, don't forget this. Now this is the key thing. This, of course, is about your creativity and potential through artists we come to know. It's going to be great. The research was fun. It's about how any artist it's about any person can awaken their creativity and grow it, finding a balance between the skills that get better with the real practice and challenges. I call the challenges triggers. And that call on these skills, see, you have these challenges and the skills have to get better to meet the challenges. It's a dynamic. This is how one creates. This is the flow. This is about the flow in yourself. I will give often with a video. Incidentally, I have maybe you know this, I have 604 videos researched and artistic on YouTube about history in this immediate area, and I'm pulling from that, and we're going to use some of those about these people. So it's about the flow. I will give the videos, and they're about artists and inventors and how they use their skill in art directly. We're going to talk about them directly without a lot of discussion. And many case studies, here's what they are. In Jefferson County, we'll do James Rumsey and John Hall, great inventors of worldwide impact. John Pendleton Kennedy, and his book Swallow Barn, which was the first of what are called the plantation literary tradition, unfortunately. And then we have Martin Delaney, a black man who wrote just before the Civil War, of all things, a book on a traveling black insurrectionist in 1860. So on top of that, these are all local. These are local people. Dansky Dandridge, who I call the poet, garden whisperer, and historian. Julia Davis Adams, photography pioneer, some of you know, O. Winston Link, buried right in Elmwood Cemetery. Terry, now we're going to do some contemporary composers. Terry Tucker, some of you know her. She wrote 2 songs for A Clockwork Orange and keeps writing all the time. Also in Shepherdstown, William Bland, who does Charles Ives style compositions and is a visual artist. Jazz composer Cam Miller and his band. The wonderful pianist and self-named Vandalia River, a young woman whose pieces on the piano are named after features around Harper's Ferry, and its beloved transgender acoustic artist and friend, once called Seth Austin, today Shana Eisenberg, and his bandmate Ralph Gordon, a cellist and bassist. But most important, someone talked about, Black Harlem. The most important of these is Don Redman. Don Redman, who spent 4 years at Storer College, is called the father of the big band, and he went to Storer, and people think he was the first to do rap. So tying it all up, when you look at these people, their works, through the lens of flow theory, I'm going to watch a video on that, and very well documented and assessing who had achieved successful routines that grew their creative output, and some that had obstacles in their way that impeded sometimes their magnificent potential. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Matt Cushion talking about his class, A Coming-of-Age Novel and the Search for Happiness. I will just say a couple things about this. For one, we in the Lifelong Learning Program are now collecting West Virginia Professor of the Years. Linda Tate was awarded that, and Matt is in the running up for this year. So we will see. Also, I think that I pitch his book better than he does. So I just want to say, I love this book so much. It is branded as a young adult novel, but I would say it's an all ages adult novel. It's a beautiful intergenerational story that weaves in the 5 principles of happiness that Matt has researched and learned. And these are principles that I've actually studied a lot throughout my life, but there's something about reading them in a fiction novel that just really helps you to embody them in a way that I really enjoyed. And it's loosely set in Shepherdstown, which makes it extra fun to read, but no one would know that because he named it something else. But we would all know it. As you read it, you will recognize the town.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Matt Cushion. I'm a professor of communication here at Shepherd University. This is my 13th year here at Shepherd. I teach public relations, social media, writing, research, an introductory course, and I also recently developed a course called Happiness, Media versus Reality. And I created that course. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I created that course kind of because of what I noticed about my students during the COVID-19 pandemic and the change that they were going through. And I myself was, exploring happiness and this massive change that was going on in the world. And somebody gave me a book, and the book was called Stumbling on Happiness by Dan Gilbert, that I would highly recommend. It's about 20 years old now, but it's a very good book by a Harvard professor. And I started thinking about happiness and why am I not happy all of the time? And I have this great career and wonderful family and all these things. And so I decided to try to create a course, and I created that course. And I taught it here at Shepherd, and it was a very popular course. But the problem I had is you can only teach, so many students a semester in a crammed room with 22 students trying to fit in a room of 20. So I was able to take a sabbatical to write this novel that the course, that lifelong learning course will be about. This novel is an extension of that class, and it, as Cindy mentioned, incorporates 5 lessons about happiness. Those lessons are derived from a combination of psychological research about happiness and research on Happiness from the Contemplative Traditions. The story is about a teenage boy who is about to get kicked out of high school for doing pranks and things, and he keeps getting in trouble. And he ultimately has to do community service at the home of a man who all of the kids in town, in this fictional town, it's called Paxson, but it's Shepherdstown without a university in it, more or less. A man named Death Row Barno, that's what everybody calls him. And this is a man who spent 25 years in prison, and all of the teenagers in the town are trying to figure out why this is, and none of the townspeople want to talk about it. So the story follows the journey of this teenager as he starts to learn about this man and this man's past and some of the misunderstandings that occurred. I don't want to give the story away. If you like books like Tuesdays with Morrie, if you like the movies like Good Will Hunting or Finding Forrester or the book The Giver, this is the type of story that this is. It's kind of a heartwarming, feel-good story. In the course, what we will do is we'll talk about myths and pitfalls of happiness, and then each week we'll talk about one of the 5 lessons, and I'll talk about the research that went into creating that lesson, or the different characters and how they struggle with that lesson in the story. So I'll have some screen captures of like text from the book, and we'll say, look, this points to this, and here's some research about this. If you really enjoy reading fiction, obviously I think you should take the class, but particularly if you enjoy kind of the opportunity to say, well, why is the story this way, or what was the choices that were being made in crafting the story, I'm going to talk to you about the characters and the struggles they have and why the story goes the way it does. But as I mentioned, there'll also be a lot of, this is the research and that kind of thing. There'll be activities for you to take home and come in, and we'll talk about them. And then my hope is to have small groups that will lead, like starting the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th week, that will lead kind of like a book discussion about it. So there'll be you'll have an opportunity to sort of come up with questions and things. I could make it a lecture where I talk the whole time, but I'd like it to be more conversational and interactive. So it would also just be an opportunity for people to share about how they relate to the lessons and happiness and so forth. Trying to make sure I talked about everything. Cindy did a really, really good job, and I'll be paying her later for mentioning the intergenerational mentorship, fictional Shepherdstown, the opportunity to experience the lessons, and there's a little bit of magic in the book. If you don't mind, I might read the description from the back of the book, and before I do that, if you'd like to read the book, it should be at Four Seasons. I was told recently that they sold out, but hopefully they're getting more copies. You can always have them order it. It's at Fuzzy Dog Books in Charlestown, and it's in Curious Iguana if you go to Frederick, and it's in Wardensville at Wordplay. I had the opportunity to go down to 2 high schools in Wardensville in Hardy County and talk to them about the book, and the students read the book and things like that. So I don't go on too long, and so you have an opportunity to eat some food. I will read you the synopsis from the back of the book. The book is called Beware the Smart Kids. It says, misfit troublemaker Nolan Sussman badly wants 2 things before high school ends: the attention of Gabby Myers and the return of his runaway sister, Sarah. But when his latest prank goes awry, Nolan is nearly expelled. He's forced to spend his summer doing yard work for Mr. Barno, a reclusive former high school teacher who spent 25 years in prison. Nolan soon finds that despite the tragic mistakes that landed Mr. Barno in prison, the old man has something even more elusive than Gabby and Sarah: happiness. Now Nolan is determined to learn how to be happy too. It's his chance to matter, his shot at a future. But secrets in Mr. Barno's past are preventing the once beloved educator from having the will to ever teach again. Secrets the 2 outcasts will have to face together. Thank you all very much. They also have the book in the library if you want to check it out. Thank you.
Yes, and all of our books that are required or recommended will be at Four Seasons Books, if they're not already. Has anyone gone there to get their books recently by chance? Okay. Well, they will be if they're not this week. So next we have short stories by the Queens of Crime, the legendary women of the golden age of crime fiction, with Pam Clark.
I'm not going to walk back and forth across the stage because I'm going to stand over here so I don't fall. So, yes, short stories, crime fiction. I have been besotted by crime since forever. I mean, certainly Sherlock Holmes is somebody that you all know and love. I've been watching Basil Rathbone be Sherlock Holmes, and then Benedict Cumberbatch and Robert Downey Jr., and that's really fine. But women have also written crime fiction, baby. So here is what it is. In the Golden Age, which is between the First World War and the Second World War, there are 4 queens of crime: Agatha Christie, Dorothy Sayers, Marjorie Allingham, and Niall Marsh. And I'm adding 2 others because it's a 6-week class, right? That's what I'm saying. So, and they themselves are very interesting women. 2 of them became dames, Agatha and Niall Marsh, who is New Zealander. One of them absented herself or her life for 11 days and checked into a hotel under her husband's mistress's name for a while, that kind of stuff. And another one had an out-of-wedlock child that she gave to another family member, and that child did not know she was his mother until she died. And then he found out that that's Dorothy Sayers, just so you know. And, you know, they are amazing women who, you know, were breaking ceilings at that point in time. Agatha has written 66 novels, and so has this other woman, Gladys Mitchell, that you have never heard of. But she wrote 66 novels, and I'm bringing her along for the ride because she did. And also I'm bringing along Josephine Tey, who you may not have heard of, and that is a crime because in publications of the 100 best mystery fiction of the last 100 years, the British Crime Writers Association put her novel first. Josephine Tey's The Daughter of Time. Okay, so if you haven't read that, we're going to read short stories, so you won't have to do that. And I will give you links to the short stories so you know we could talk about them in class. And she's just pretty amazing. And then the Mystery Writers of America also had a list of 100 best things forever. And Josephine Tey came in as 4th, and Agatha Christie didn't even weigh in until 10th. So I'm just saying, got a little, you know, some perception changes here that we're going to be going for. And I need to let you know that the class will not be starting on Friday, March 14th, because I won't be here. I will be in Denver at the Left Coast Crime Conference because I'm a mystery writer. I go to all these conventions. This one is, the big name is Sarah Paretsky. So I won't be here. So it won't start until the second week, and then we'll add a week at the end, and that'll be very exciting. So the Queens of Crime, you know, crowning them is what I intend to do. Thank you very much.
Okay, it appears Roger Snook didn't make it this evening, so I just want to pitch his design thinking course because I think it's a really wonderful course for our community, for anyone who is engaging in community problem solving, whether you're on the town council, I see you, Marcy, or you live in Shepherd Village, or any sort of collaborative living. Again, Marcy, you should really take this one. This class kind of takes you through a process that's very collaborative and creative to work together to solve all sorts of problems. And in his example in here, it can be as simple. What was his example in here? Yeah, I mean, it could be as simple as parking issues or online shopping experiences, something that you find really challenging in life, but it can really be as big as large community issues that we're having around recycling, environmental issues, political issues, safety around town, you know, all sorts of things. So if you regularly engage or want to engage in making our community a better place, I think this is a really great course to take. So that's all for our instructors this evening. We do have a retirement planning today, which we do every semester. It's a workshop that's 2 parts, and you can choose to do it on Thursdays or Saturdays. So it's kind of out of the box of our 6 weeks courses. We also have Draw Your Days, which starts at the end of this 6-week process, and that is full. But she often takes people off the wait list. So if you've never taken a class with Kirsten Lee and you're interested in taking this course, I would recommend getting on the wait list. And then the last thing is the Wild Writers Retreat, and it's a little bit later in the spring than usual. The dates are May 18th to 21st. And Denise is organizing it this time, and she's doing a fabulous job. It's going to be great. Maybe I'll just read that one. The retreat offers a getaway for writers at all levels interested in developing their craft and expanding their writing community. In May, the program will provide plenty of personal writing time, bookended with a morning workshop led by award-winning authors, and after-dinner critique sessions for those interested in giving and receiving feedback on their work. Not only will writers have uninterrupted time to write among supportive fellow writers in a peaceful environment, the low-key mountain resort at Capon Springs Farm is a perfect location for serious hiking, swimming, golfing, stargazing, fishing, and eating. And if you have any questions, Denise's email is in here, and she can send out a more detailed schedule. So that is all that we have for now. Does anyone have any questions before we have some treats? Okay, great.